Good morning, colleagues, and welcome back. I was swerving whether or not to record this message or whether to do it live, but I actually suspect recording it is the better option, just for the simple reason that it will hopefully avoid any technical hitches, and if you can't get to watch it straight away, you'll be able to watch it at another time. So I have a few topics to cover this morning. And I'm going to start off by sharing a screen with you, just a few slides, and that'll take us through today's order of events. So, welcome everyone. I know that it's unusual circumstances, and normally I actually genuinely miss not being able to see all your faces in front of me. It's a very odd experience having to speak into a camera. But welcome everyone. I know everyone will have mixed feelings about coming back today, but I can genuinely say that I am happy to be back at work today and looking just to get some sort of normality back, not just into my life, but to the life of the school as well. I had a friend, we've got a Motherwell Wishaw Shots Hades WhatsApp group, and I thought this was quite nice. This was sent to one of our head teacher colleagues in another school by a nurse in the States. And I'll just allow you to read that just now. I think it's very apt, and I absolutely appreciate that for some of you, you'll still be very nervous, apprehensive, stressed, anxious about coming back, whether that be about the dangers to your health from the virus, or whether it be about the general difficulty in coming back after a long period of absence, of working with youngsters who you haven't seen for many days or weeks. Whatever the feelings that you have, as I said before the holidays to many of you, the only way that we get through this really is about supporting one another, about really being true to our values of a caring community where we look after one another and we take your health and happiness seriously. And I really mean that. I think it's important that I get to support you, that we in turn support one another, that you support me, because I absolutely can guarantee I don't have all the answers, and probably just like yourselves, many questions that still remain unanswered in some ways. But yes, we also need to support our pupils coming back over the next days and weeks as well. And as this suggests, whatever the future holds, I do strongly suspect that if we support one another, that's the way we'll get through it, and indeed we will be okay. Okay, we have a very short period of time really before we actually see the pupils. We're obviously now sitting watching this presentation. I've quite deliberately tried to leave as much time for yourselves to organise your rooms, think about what you're going to be teaching over the rest of the week, and indeed about what the future holds, and really giving you as much time either in your classroom or with your colleagues in your faculty, and that's been quite deliberate. We've really tried to keep any meetings to a minimum. Most of them are virtual, with the exception of, as a rule of thumb, we aim for meetings that are no more than half a dozen people. And I know some of your faculties are bigger than that, I appreciate that. So we are going to do a face-to-face faculty PT meeting at 11:40 in the conference room, and similar for our inclusion team, which is the new name for our pupil support team, also in the conference room, and the staff representative group, where we will go over some of the risk assessments, the work that we've done preparing the school, and other issues, for instance, the school calendar. And again, we've asked, or said to Colin and others, that if we can have our professional association via Teams, that would be a preference, again, really just to avoid having large numbers together in one space. So, few issues to go over today. As is always a tradition at these meetings, we start off by welcoming our new staff. Now, normally this is one of the highlights of the year for me, where I get to humiliate or ritually humiliate new staff. So what I'd like you to do, colleagues, is if these members of staff are in the faculty meeting watching this, make them stand up, make them turn around and do a dance or a jig and introduce themselves, at least to their colleagues if they haven't already done so. So can I say a very warm welcome to Heather in English, Max also in English, Jack in biology, Greg modern studies, Chantel in drama. I should have said they're all our probationers. A very odd time to be starting off your career, but I can absolutely guarantee that you will be working with some brilliant colleagues, and you're very lucky to be in Clyde Valley, even if it is a very strange time. And I have absolutely no doubt that the staff in Clyde Valley will make you all very welcome and give you a great experience in obviously very difficult circumstances. We have some other new staff, and again, a big welcome to Sophie in PE, Gemma in English, and Greg in English. We have a few familiar faces returning with us, which I'm delighted about as well. And we have a returning core supply staff as well, which again, very delighted to be seeing back. We're doing okay for staffing, probably on paper, better than we've been for many years. And we do have some additionality supplied by the Scottish Government, and indeed NLC have topped that up with extra probationary hours. So that's all to the good, and we'll certainly need that with the increased pupils, increased role, which is a good problem to have, as you know. So I want to spend a wee bit of time talking about health and safety. I say I want to talk a wee bit about it, but I really just want to state the obvious, that this is the most important part of my job, and indeed your job. And again, that caring community motto that's right in front of you, the top of the screen, is if you see something wrong or you think's not quite right, don't keep it to yourself. Bring it to the attention of your faculty head, or to one of the deputies, or to myself, because we don't have all the answers. We've tried very hard to think and make sure that yourselves and pupils are as safe as possible. I'm thinking particularly in the precautions we take around the spread of virus. But in general, please, that is the most important thing that we all have to do for one another. There is a lot of documentation which I've supplied through the first class system. If any of our new staff or probationers haven't access to first class, and I ask that the faculty heads make sure, and Mr. Lanning will do the same, that you have all that either in handbooks or additional information. I deliberately put out a number of documents via first class to avoid spending a lot of time going over the detail of it. But in essence, we want to ensure that there is minimal movement around the school, that the 2 metre distancing is enforced between adults and between adults and pupils, that any visitors to school will be wearing face masks, that everyone that enters and leaves the building at any point will sanitise their hands. We're also going to be asking, particularly with practical subjects, but all subjects in general, we're eventually going to have a device which allows you to spray seats and desks and wipe them down with paper towels. I don't think that's quite up and running yet. It needs to be plumbed in. So we have packets of anti-bac wipes. What we're suggesting that you do is that you wipe down any equipment that's been used, keyboards, musical keyboards, computer keyboards, mice, anything that pupils would touch, and indeed desk surfaces as well. I'm going to talk a wee bit about how the curriculum probably isn't quite as you're going to expect in terms of how long you're going to see the pupils, but you really only should be doing that 3, possibly 4 times a day. The suggestion from North Lanarkshire is that the used wipe, paper towel, is left at the side of the table and pupils dispose of that on the way out. Again, that's in the documentation. So these, if you like, are the nuts and bolts of staying safe and healthy. One of the reasons we're meeting the SRG is to go over our school risk assessment and to raise any other concerns. There is a wealth of information both online, both supplied to you through first class, the Scottish Government, that goes into detail. For instance, textbooks, the recommendation is that they shouldn't be used between pupils. The example is library books, it's a 72-hour quarantine. But I'm sure there'll be other questions like that that perhaps are in your mind that I haven't thought about. Please raise those questions with your faculty heads at the meeting following this, and they can raise them with myself, either at the faculty head meeting or indeed at the staff representative group. But health and safety is all a responsibility. It's not my responsibility exclusively, it's all a responsibility. So again, let's look after one another and make sure that we are healthy and happy about the arrangements. Talking of arrangements, the school day arrangements have already been indicated via First Class school website. As you know, we're doing a phased return. S1 will be with us every day, but we'll be starting off with S1, 2, 3 on Wednesday, and the other year groups to follow. We will be trying to stagger morning intervals. The reason for that is, as you know, the Scottish Government website is not for year groups to mix or to avoid year groups mixing, and to restrict movement as much as possible around the school. The particular difficulty with that is the social area. So in essence, we are not going to allow pupils really to use the social area. They will come down in year groups, and we will turn the bell off in Tannoy, starting at 10:15, bringing down first year, then second year, to the canteen area. They will purchase whatever snack they want and then go out to the playground. If the weather is inclement, then they will go to either the assembly hall or the gym, and we'll give you those details exactly, but you don't need to worry too much about it, other than that we are again attempting to limit the contact between year groups, which means that the interval will happen staggered between 10:20 and 10:50. And in essence, you will have, as a member of staff, get your interval at the same time as whatever class group that you have. So if it's first year, you would get your interval from 10:15 when you dismiss that first year down to morning interval. I hope that makes sense. Lunchtime, it's a little bit easier in some respects. The authority recommend that we try and keep all pupils in the school. That, in all honesty, colleagues, is practically impossible. So I have no doubt that the vast majority of second to sixth year will go out of school. First year we will be keeping in school. But again, the idea is that they will buy their lunch, and then once they've finished consuming their lunch, they will go out to the playground. The social area will be kept clear, other than pupils using toilets and the canteen facilities. One of the things I would ask you is to consider helping with us these arrangements, both as pupils arrive in the morning and until just in general supervision, and at the very least that you are aware that you are in the corridors and visible to pupils at various times during the day. Which leads me on to our one-way system. North Lanarkshire, in their wisdom, decided to go for a keep left system, or as a senior leadership team, we spent quite a deal of time designing a one-way system, and in all honesty, we're unhappy with a keep left system. So we are going to persevere with the one-way system we designed. And the reason for that is very simple. It's, again, to minimise movement around the school and really to avoid pupils facing each other as they pass by. And the reality is we thought a keep left system, getting our pupils to essentially be single file down one side of a corridor and down another side of the corridor, simply wasn't going to happen. So we are going to persevere with the one-way system, which will look something like this. When pupils arrive in the morning, and this is morning only, they will assemble in different zones. Zone 1 will be S5, S6, the main entrance. S5, 6 we're going to allow into the building. They won't have to hang about. And Zone 2 will be S2, S4, and Zone 3, S1, S3 at the back of the school. Now, initially, what we're going to do is myself and SLT will be at these stairwells, As pupils arrive from the bus, we're going to ensure they hand sanitize, and they will then go directly to their class, whatever time they arrive at. Some clearly will want to go and purchase a breakfast, which is fine. The instructions to them will be to go and purchase that breakfast and then to consume it in the playground area before going up to class. The reason we're doing that is to avoid any large crowds gathering initially for the first few days. Beyond that, once pupils get into the habit of knowing what zone they assemble in, we will then potentially, dependent on the weather, keep them outside until they are due to come into classes. Can I just remind everyone that the guidance from a health and safety point of view is that all classroom doors should be open, wedged open, kept open. That as much as possible, corridor doors should also be open, except those which are fire doors. And also that natural ventilation should be in operation, so windows should be open. There is the mechanical ventilation, which is currently set at a higher volume than normal, again to drive fresh air through the building. The reason that pops into my mind, I'm mentioning just now, is that it's not ideal, but we will allow pupils to go directly to classes. So there may be pupils arriving from roughly when the buses arrive, 25, 9:15. The time they get down to the school, we will be getting them to sanitise their hands and go to their first class, which will have been indicated via text. Initially in first period on a Wednesday, their house time class will issue them with their timetable. Internally in the building, if you look at these yellow arrows, we are operating at, if you like, an anti-clockwise system. If you look at it from above in this particular diagram, the yellow arrows indicate the way we want pupils to follow. The stairwells will essentially be up at the start of the day, down at morning interval, up at the end of morning interval, down at the start of lunchtime, up at the end of lunchtime, and down at the end of the school day. There won't be a changeover, which I'll explain in a second. Similar with the other levels, the upper ground floor, again, anti-clockwise. You can see it's slightly different going round the primary area, I guess, round the assembly hall, and that's just because they have a slightly different system, but the vast majority of our pupils don't have to go that way, so that shouldn't confuse them too much. And the first floor, again, the anti-clockwise system. You can see we're also allowing a degree of flow through the library, and that's really just pragmatically to allow or to avoid pupils having to go a very long way to get round to a particular area of the building. Similarly with the corridor ICT, one way down going from music to maths. Again, these documents will be sent out to you. It will undoubtedly be confusing at the start, and this is where I would ask you to be out and about the first few days, pointing. There'll be lots of arrows on the walls, but pointing pupils in the right direction. So that's the one-way system. I'm just going to briefly talk about the SQA results. As you know, well, I don't think it's a big shock to you that there's a bit of a political hoo-ha going on around the SQA results. Normally, I'd be asking to look at results machine, and we're doing statistical analysis. And I do have some of these from the authority, but frankly, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time because there's clearly a lot of dust still to settle with SQA results and a gargantuan amount of appeals to go in. So I think our time would be best serviced focusing right now and getting the school up and running. We will worry about the SQA results or analysing them when things are more settled. And I think that's a pragmatic way to look at it. Vinny will talk to faculty heads about appeals and so on later on today. Also want to just remind everyone that we are starting a new management structure as of today. And again, I think it'll take a wee bit of getting used to, but actually in many ways it's a more streamlined, and what we've tried to do is take the opportunity to realign things in a more meaningful way. I know most of you will have seen this diagram apart from our new members of staff, but in essence, if you look at the blue block, House 1, then the sort of reddish block, House 2, the green block, House 3, there's a deputy in charge of each one of them. Yes, we are reintroducing a third house. We will temporarily call it Snedden, but I think one of the things we'd like to do, and one of the things I'd be interested in your opinion, is we'll be taking this opportunity to rebrand or rename the houses. I have no strong opinion about what those names should be, but it would seem to me that this might be, A, do we want to rename them, and B, if we do, what we recall them. But for speed, if you like, we will have the three houses and the rebirth of Snedden, at least temporarily, if that is indeed the case. House 1, that's going to be Yvonne. She'll be in charge of PT Curriculum 1 and PT Curriculum 2. And again, the logic that we've looked at is that Yvonne will link with the languages faculty and the health and wellbeing faculty, because she will also have overarching view or management around the inclusion team, which is the yellow blocks at the bottom. The red one, House 2, that will be Mr. Lanigan, and he'll be looking after humanities and expressive arts. And House 3 will be Mr. Cross, and he will be the link to science, numeracy and technologies, PTs. So we're realigning it, and hopefully you can see the logic in it. Myself and the deputies will attend all the faculty, PT faculty meetings. So I will be involved in all of them, but the individual deputies will be in terms of alignment with this diagram. The yellow box down the bottom is really, again, we're taking the opportunity to change the nomenclature around pupil support and really bring it up to the same nomenclature that the Scottish Government, NLC, and it actually makes a great deal of sense. So we now are an inclusion team. So what was pupil support, or PT1, is now PT inclusion and pupil support. And you can see down the bottom, again, we've aligned the PT pupil support with each house. So we have PT support 1, will look after Holdsworth. PT inclusion 2 will look after Curran. PT inclusion 3 will look after House 3, Snedden. And PT inclusion 4 will look after S5 and S6. And that's really just to give an equal burden of caseload of pupils. But we will have one PT inclusion aligned with each house until it gets to 5th and 6th year, where one PT inclusion will take over 5th and 6th year for all houses. And then the 5th PT inclusion is inclusion and support for learning. So that's Mr. Keating. He will also take on a small caseload of ASD pupils. He'll, in essence, be their pupil support teacher for those pupils. So they'll, if you like, be separated out from the houses. The pupils won't be aware of that, just in terms of who provides the support for them. And that's really just because he clearly is heavily involved in the planning and the writing of support plans around those pupils. That, again, that just makes it a sensible adjustment. But altogether, that is a new inclusion team. So I can ask you to start using that nomenclature rather than go to your pupil support. It's go to your PT inclusion or your inclusion teacher, or indeed whoever that might be. Again, this has all been given out, and you'll have those diagrams in your inbox. The school day arrangements I've already mentioned. School calendar, we, because of lockdown, because of the intervening holidays, we simply haven't had the time to do the planning around the school calendar that we would have liked to do. This is unfortunate, of course. We have, at the very least, updated it into September for the school website, but one of the things we will, and unfortunately, college, you'll just need to bear with us. We obviously have the fixed points of the holidays and set days, but beyond that, we do need to have some time to sit down and do planning and go through the proper consultation process with yourselves. Just before I leave school calendar, something that I just need to mention around school day arrangements. I kind of hinted at this before. we are going to do a slightly different curricular structure. So you should all have a copy of the new timetable. However, in line with every secondary school in North Lanarkshire, we will not be implementing a period by period changeover. We are in fact going to double up our periods, which means that we will only be changing classrooms at start of the day, morning interval, lunchtime, and the end of the day. The very straightforward and easy way to do this, which allows us to do this and then switch back to a normal timetable when circumstances allow, is what we're going to do is create a 2-week rota, and each week it will change from either the period 1 or the period 2 class as being that big block of learning. So if I could perhaps give an example to think of it in a particular way. So on Wednesday, period 1, pupils on a normal Wednesday would go to their period 1 class. Period 1 in week 1 will extend to morning interval. There will be no period 2. So it will be 2 times 50 minutes. It won't be exactly 2 hours, but it will be a double period. At interval or after interval, they go to their period 3 class, which will continue to lunchtime. There will be no period 4. They will go to their period 5 class in the long day, and then they will go to their period 6 class. The period 6 class will extend to the end of the day. On the week 2, that's reversed. So in the first period, period 2 would start at the start of the school day and continue to morning interval. Period 4 would start at the end of morning interval, so there would be no period 3. And again, period 7 would start at the beginning of period 6 and extend to the end of the school day. On the short days, clearly, period 5 and period 6 would alternate with the different weeks. So by that very straightforward implementation, what it allows us to do is essentially pupils arrive at school and go up stairwells to their class, following a one-way system. They then will go down stairwells to morning interval. They then will go up stairwells to their period 3 or period 4 class, and down at lunchtime, up at the end of lunchtime. There will be a degree of changeover on the long days at period 5. Period 5 is a single period, if you like. And then down at the end of the day. That really, in combination with a one-way system, will have, or just under half, the amount of movement throughout the day. It will mean that using the one-way system, the staircases, there should really be no flow of traffic against pupils at any one time. They're all going in the same direction. Again, this is all about minimising interaction between different year groups and getting the pupils or minimising the potential transmission of any virus. That's the reason we're doing it. Can I just say, this is not just us, this has been agreed in every secondary school across North Lanarkshire. There are a number of knock-on effects around cover. So one of the things we'll be talking around SRG is just making sure that that's fair in terms of, you know, if you're asked to do a please take for potentially a double period, that it's not going to be detrimental to anyone, that you'll essentially will look at the cover over 2 weeks rather than one. No one will be taken below their minimum time, though, and that still will be the case. So that's the change to the curriculum. Final thing I wanted to mention today is, with every, I suppose, crisis or problem, and let's face it, COVID has been one of the biggest problems that we've all had to face, there are always opportunities. I was truly humbled and really proud of the way that staff stepped up to the plate, in many cases reskilled themselves using Teams, digital technologies through the lockdown, and how they tried, they might not have always got the response for pupils, but tried to engage pupils in their learning. But it certainly started a chain of thought with myself And I've already had preliminary discussions with the faculty heads about the possibility of, one of the things that was very apparent through that was the difficulty that some families, many families had, because they didn't have digital devices or internet access. And as you know, the authority are playing catch up in many respects, trying to supply those devices and opportunities to our youngsters. But one of the things that we thought about was, well, if we're going to have the pupil equity fund, and we obviously need to think about our school improvement planning at some point. Don't worry, I'm not going to be spending a good deal of time on school improvement planning, and certainly not for the next couple of months. However, longer term, and one of the things I was suggesting to faculty heads is that perhaps we should really look at, we've come to the end of our contract with Action for Children, is looking at the PEF funding as a way of closing that digital divide. And what I mean by that, colleagues, is let's plan, not that we want to go into lockdown again, but let's plan for not ever being in the scenario where our pupils are disadvantaged about their lack of digital technology. And let's build on that. Let's build a school where the digital learning is absolutely woven into the fabric of our teaching and learning as well. So what I'd like your views on, and I'll be talking to the pupil council and the parent council about this as well, but I'd like to move quite quickly on this, is spending the bulk of our PEF money on supplying digital devices to all our pupils. And we won't have the money to do it for every pupil initially, but certainly starting off with our first year, potentially second year as well. And providing them with the dongle that allows them to access the internet with the device at home. We are fortunate that North Lanarkshire now have a build for a digital device, a laptop, which would be based around a Windows machine, and the dongle, and they've bought a humongous amount of data, which we can piggyback off the back of that. So it'd be relatively inexpensive. The real tricky part with that, colleagues, as you know, is supporting the people and actually creating the materials. But the more I've thought about it, the more excited I actually am, as a real opportunity to actually redesign our teaching and learning and our methodology along the assumption that our long-term plan is that all our pupils will not be disadvantaged by a lack of devices, and in fact will become very digitally literate. All the materials that I've developed on Teams, I know that Craig MacDonald was really instrumental in driving forward Teams. I am as well, in terms of, you may recall, trying to encourage the use of Glow many moons ago on an inset day, which went down actually very poorly, with the particular person that's delivering the inset probably did more harm than good. But I always thought there was definitely an opportunity. But and Craig has been pushing for this for a while, and I suppose the opportunity of lockdown, if that's the right way to look at it, has allowed us to really move forward in Teams, that we're all now not only comfortable with it, but actually see the power of it ultimately replacing us as being our main learning platform. We still have Show My Homework, quite funny in many respects, because I told them that I wasn't interested in renewing the contract. To cut a long story short, they went from wanting £3,000 off us to giving us it free for the next 6 months. So we'll take that, and we'll continue to use that in tandem. But really the direction of travel is Glow. So I would really like you to discuss that at your faculty meetings and give any feedback to the PTs, because if we do move in that, it's the one area of school improvement which there's no point in waiting, frankly. And if we had to go back to a blended learning scenario, how great it would be to actually have that in place and purchase a device. Purchase a device is the easy part. The ask, I guess, from you colleagues is, on top of everything else you've got just now, would be, you would be wanting to start to think about how you develop that learning. The advantage, they're not using textbooks that have to be quarantined, the wealth of digital information that you can supply to support learning, whether it be SumDog, Modern Languages Programme, you know your subjects better than all the fantastic opportunities that digital learning presents, and ultimately carrying less textbooks for the pupils, less photocopying, etc., over the years, the bank of materials that build all that we potentially can build up. So as you probably can tell, I'm quite excited about that. Have a think about it, please. Feedback via your faculty heads. your views on that. So, I'd like to start, colleagues, really similar to how we finished. I never cease to be amazed that the talent, the ingenuity and determination of our colleagues across all faculties. I certainly can't move the school forward. You are the people that move the school forward. Simon Sinek, I'm a big fan. I've used him in Inset Days before. He talks about leadership, but actually the really interesting thesis that he suggests is that leadership really is about allowing you to lead, you to be engaged in the process of change. And that really depends on the relationships that we have with one another. And it's back to our vision and values. We need to be a community. We need to look after one another, and we need to support one another, because when we do, that's when the remarkable things will happen. Colleagues, I know you've probably got a million questions, and I'm happy to take them via email, and I'm happy to take them fed back through your faculty heads. Please look after yourselves. Don't worry about the future. It is all about supporting one another. And hopefully at some point today, I'll actually get to see you in the flesh and say hello to you. If not today, hopefully over the next few days. Thank you, and hopefully we will, as I say, be able to really move the school forward, and more importantly, support our young people in a safe and happy return to their learning. Thank you.